For this video, we are going to use the rules for rounding to the correct number of significant figures. So this can come really natural to some people and it can be very confusing to others. But as long as you know your rounding rules, that's a really good foundation to make sure that you know how to properly round numbers if I ask you to round to a certain number of significant figures. So let me just go straight to the example before I go through these rules. I might tell you to take this number 5.3542 and round it to 3 sig figs, or 3 significant figures. And what you would do is you would start from the leftmost sig fig and then count the desired number of sig figs. So I want 3. I'm going to start here on the left, my first sig fig, count 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to determine, does this 5 stay a 5, or is the number next to it going to make it round up to a 6? So because this is a 4, the 5 is going to stay a 5. If I round this to 3 significant figures, I end up with 5.35. It might be a good idea that you hit pause wherever you feel comfortable enough to and try to predict the answer before I reveal it. That might be a good thing for you to do through this video lesson. You cannot change the value of any significant figure. Sometimes what people do, for an example like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0.89, if I asked you to round it to 3 sig figs, you might think about writing, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then that's your final answer, 1, 2, 3. But if you just wrote 123, that is not the same value as this number, 1,234,567.89. Just imagine, if this is your bank account and you asked a teller to estimate how much money you had in your bank account to 3 sig figs, if they said 123, that's not the same thing and you'd be really upset. So what we have to do is we're going to fill in the rest of the numbers with zeros. So I'm going to take the rest of the numbers in this measurement and transform them into zeros. But notice I didn't add 0.00. I didn't add 0.00 because I need to make sure that this rounded number still only has 3 sig figs, 1, 2, 3. I kept all of these numbers as zeros, or I turned them into zeros rather, because I want to make sure to keep this value in the 1 millionths. It might help for you to say the number out loud, like I said this was 1,234,567.89, and then when you say out loud your rounded number, make sure it has the same place value, the same meaning, 1,230,000. If I asked you to round this number to 2 sig figs, 5.3542, what you would do is you would start from the left again, just count 2 sig figs, count 2 numbers, 1, 2. The 3 is then either going to stay a 3 or it's going to round up to a 4. It's just like what you learned in math several years ago. So since this 3 is next to a 5, it's going to round up to a 4, and then we end up with 5.4 as our rounded value. If I ask you to take this number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0.89, and round it to 5 sig figs, you would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this 5 is sitting next to a 6. So I'm going to take the 5, round it up to a 6 because it's sitting next to a 5 or greater. See? 5 or greater. And then it ends up being 1,234,600. The 5 was changed to a 6 because it rounds up. So one of the things you want to do is you want to ask yourself, is the original value and the rounded value similar? If it's similar, then you know you're doing a good job and you can go ahead and move on. I think that you should go ahead and hit pause after I give you the instruction. For this practice, I would like for you to round all of these values to 3 significant figures. Go ahead and hit pause now, practice that out, and then when you're ready, keep watching to check your answers. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal these answers now. For letter A, I'm going to start from the leftmost sig fig and count 1, 2, 3. The 2 is going to stay a 2. It's not going to round up to a 3. And I report this using 3 significant figures like so, 51.2. For the second example, 3 sig figs would be 1, 2, 3. The 3 is then going to either stay a 3 or round up to a 4. And since it's sitting next to an 8, it rounds up to a 4. I have 51.4. For letter C, 51.3587, rounded to 3 significant figures, 1, 2, 3. The 3 is sitting next to a 5 or higher. So I'm going to round this 3 up to a 4. I end up with 51.4 as well. For this number here, I have 51,358, rounded to 3 sig figs, 1, 2, 3. The 3 rounds up to a 4, so I end up with 51,400, not 514. Make sure to keep the value to read 51,000, and you can do that by making sure you add extra zeros, but you should not have a decimal place at the end of the number. For letter E, watch out for this one because you need to count your sig figs starting from the leftmost sig fig. These aren't sig figs. The zeros in the front are not significant, so I'm going to start here and count. 1, 2, 3. The 5 is going to round up to a 6 because it's sitting next to a 5. And I have to remember to continue to write these over because I want to keep the value to be the same. I don't want to get rid of those leading zeros. They're not significant, so they're not changing the number of sig figs in my answer. They're there to keep the value of the number. And finally, this 5,135,593 rounded to 1, 2, 3 sig figs. This 3 rounds up to a 4 because it's sitting next to a 5. All of these guys are going to turn into zeros, and I end up with 5,140,000, no decimal at the end.